So thank you, everybody. I welcome everybody and those online to today's order paper of 5th of June. And we had a council meeting already this morning, so we've got the council prayer there. I have apologies received from Councillor Rokawa, Councillor Hira, and potentially Councillor Dagiri. I see you are online. So just the two, Councillor Rokawa, Councillor Hira, looking for somebody to so move. Thank you, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Sharlin. Those in favour? Those against? We have no public forum today. Expressions of interest, conflicts of interest, sorry, not expressions. So conflict of interest, there are a number of items today, and please declare them as they come up. But are there any wanting to be declared now? No. The order of business is as already presented to us in the agenda, and no changes from you. No changes. In terms of the confirmation of minutes, I'm looking for alterations and corrections. Pages 5, 6, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, 10 and 11. I think that's all 11. Any alterations or corrections? Would somebody like to so move them? Thank you. Councillor Carter moving. Thank you. She got a delay here, Councillor. Yeah. Councillor Wilson seconding. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. In terms of moving through to item number 7, the reports for decision, would somebody like to move, please, that the report be received? Thank you. Councillor Lambert moving, Councillor Carter seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Is this the stage where we move, Jana? Welcome to council and take us through it, please.
Thank you. So today, as part of the annual planning co-act, we are bringing to you 4 key topics. There's the draft waste management and minimisation plan, the draft dangerous, affected and sanitary buildings policy, the schedule of fees and charges for next year, and the annual plan, which we consulted on as the plan program of work for next year. We consulted on these topics throughout April into the beginning of May, and we received 23 submissions. This includes 1 late submission that's only received a couple of days late, so it has been included in the officer analysis. You'll see the attachment that's called officer analysis of submissions. So that takes you through all the submissions that officers have considered and written some responses for council to consider. And then further on in the document towards the end, we've also grouped other requests from submitters by key topic. Before we progress further, I'd recommend that you address recommendations 2 to 3, but happy to take any questions on the process or about the meeting today.
Thank you very much. In terms of recommendation 2, councillors, I think this is a given that we received the submissions. Would somebody like to so move? Councillor Duncan, Councillor Carter, those in favour? No. Those against? Carried. Does anybody wish to make any questions around recommendation 3, just acknowledging and thanking the submitters? Would somebody like to so move? Thank you. Councillor Loud and Councillor Wong, those in favour? Those against? Carried. That deals with recommendations 2 and 3. And I'd just like to thank all of those submitters as a recommendation. Takes a considerable amount of time for some of our submitters to consider, and we appreciate the effort that you go to. Back to you, Janet.
So the first topic that we consulted on was the draft waste management and minimisation plan. So council is required to review this every 6 years. This plan sets out our vision and targets for minimising and managing waste within the district. So workshops were held with council throughout last year to guide the development of this plan. The approach that we ended up with consulting on was not significantly different from the previous one. We had 14 submitters commenting on the vision, with the majority of them agreeing with what we had written. We also had 13 submitters comment on each of the targets. So majority of submitters agreed to the reduction of materials by 10% and the reduction of final disposal by 30%. You'll see that there was a bit more of a split for the third target, which was reducing biogenic methane emissions, but we still had more submitters agreeing than disagreeing with that target. Happy to take any questions on this, and we have recommendation 5 associated with it.
Questions, and there's a separate tab for this within the system within Big Tin Can. If anybody wants to take further time, change to that tab. I know in terms of, are there any things that you want to raise with regard to this?
No, I think we've discussed it and got it.
No, you'd be wishing to move.
Happy to move. Recommendation 5, council adopts waste management minimisation without amendment and gives effect to the chief executive the authority to make minor editorial changes.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Lambert seconded. You wish to speak to it?
I don't think it's required. It's been thoroughly discussed by the committee across the board. Again, thank you to the submitters.
Yeah. Any other speakers to it? Put it straight to the vote, and those in favour?
No.
Those against? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Next one.
Yep, so topic 2 was the dangerous and affected and unsanitary buildings policy. So this one was another policy that we were required to review. The Policy and Planning Committee went through the process of reviewing it before council adopted a consultation. The changes that we consulted on were considered to be fairly minor, keeping with the reactive approach that the previous policy had. We had 9 submitters responding to this question, with the majority of them agreeing with the policy as it was drafted. So with this policy, we have recommendation 6. I also note that there is a submitter request under this heading for recommendation 7 to address after as well.
Yes, I see that. Any questions with regard to recommendation 6? Does somebody want to so move?
Oh, not a question, but just a typo. The interested residents of Martin and Rangatiki, not all Rangatiki. It runs through the whole document. Thank you.
That comes under the minor editorial changes, so it's encompassed as is. Would somebody like to so move? Oh, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Lambert, again, you wish to speak to it?
No, I think it's been well and thoroughly looked at through policy and planning. A great deal of discussion about this one, actually, and a policy now that I, for one, certainly have a greater understanding of of what it is. I think it's sound and solid, so happy to move.
Are there any further speakers? Yeah. Councillor Duncan.
I have a question. I just wonder if the change in policy around earthquake standards, etc., that are coming to the minister in June, whether that will have any bearing on these sorts of buildings in our district, and if it does, will this be the sort of thing that staff would bring back to us to have a look at? Because obviously we have to move these now, and we can't wait until whenever it is that we actually have surety around this.
Yeah, I'll comment as well, but go to staff first.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Yes, it will definitely, once central government has made any changes and it affects any of our policies, then we'll bring it back to council.
That was pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Good point to raise, and I wondered about it when I read this as well. But effectively, if government makes a decision, we follow it. However, if government makes a decision to potentially relax, that's another issue again as well. Because they can, councils may consider. Any further speakers, otherwise put it to the vote. No, those in favour, those against, carried 7. Some question around this in a minute, but take us through 7, please.
So this was a topic brought up by a submitter. They were just asking us to identify options, or asked us really to explore a policy that council could write to help building owners in our district to redevelop and refurbish buildings.
And my question here, when I read this report and I went back through it again this morning, effectively that says we do not have any option currently. And I wonder if that is correct, because under economic development, we have policies around potential assistance in terms of rating relief and the internal consenting charges. But surely that should be reflected within the support to building owners.
That's the SOBA.
Your worship, just to answer that question, that rating remission policy primarily talks to earthquake prone buildings,
Right.
which is separate to what was asked for within the submission, which is more around the refurbishment of buildings rather than strengthening.
I take it that the two are so clearly aligned with many of our buildings. I wonder whether there should be at least an officer comment referring people to this.
Mm.
Do that in the response back
And-
to the submission.
So I'll go first of all, the Chief
Yeah, I was
Executive,
just going
Carol.
to say, because we respond to the submitters, we can notify them of that policy and that it is in place.
Yeah, so long as somewhere there's a link to show that there is possible assistance in this space, I'm happy with it. So that would become part of the recommendation. Council Louder.
I have a conflict of interest with this recommendation. I'm a member of the group that submitted on this policy, but I took no part in the submissions.
We just note there's a conflict of interest with regard to Councillor Loud and Councillor Duncan.
I also wonder, this is more of a question as well. Does this sort of reflect on our heritage buildings, basically? And we do in our spatial plan have reference to how we value the heritage, the built heritage in our district. So I wonder if this is where that something along these lines would sit.
Yeah, I think probably by saying that there are options for any building would pick that up in terms of economic development. But I take your point. If you want to also note that we have a desire, a council desire to maintain heritage.
I'd very much like to see that.
So I'm going to want to see staff some recommendation changes here. Councillor Morn.
I'm just concerned about, it says investigate, so it's a lot more staff time to start doing that. And does it fall already into Jared's role? That's my big concern is it's another investigation. We got a whole lot of projects underway that we need to actually get moving. And it's another sidestep in my view.
I think in terms of the changes that I'm suggesting, it's not requiring an investigation because it's an existing policy that should be acknowledged or an existing support. So I don't see absolutely the need for a new investigation. It's just acknowledging what is currently sitting there. Councillor Wilson.
Seeking to move the recommendation, your worship, if I may, and seconding a seconder, if you would allow.
as is without any change.
I would like to move that the recommendation of council does not ask officers to investigate. As it has a delete one clause as per the order paper.
Yeah. Looking for a seconder to that.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor, you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. This is a very broad request. And the more we think about it, and even in the brief discussion that we've had around this table, there is lots and lots of different avenues that people can approach council on one-on-one individual basis. And we've seen that many times on our time sitting around this council table. It does not preclude anybody coming to council with a refurbishment. It is simply not possible, I believe, for staff to investigate a refurbished existing buildings policy and come back to the next financial for 25-26, given the workload that they've got on. I don't believe it's reasonable. I believe that council has the facility to help in refurbishing existing buildings at any time should an individual approach be made. So I don't see this as being required.
A question to staff here. So I have raised something that you've said could be considered in response. If you adopt as is, does that allow you still to do acknowledge?
So I think the suggestion would be to, when we go back to the submitter, to highlight what we already have in place rather than anything extra that we will be doing. So both of those documents you're talking.
Yeah, so long as the two are possible, is that possible in your
I
mind?
would have thought that was a given, Your Worship, with the recommendation that I've asked.
So,
Second that.
does you want him to speak to it as a question?
No, I want him to speak to it as a seconder.
Yes.
I agree with what councillor Wilson's said, and I think there is avenues that people can pursue. I think this is just a throwaway motion, and the way, it's already in place. I don't even think it's, worth being on the order paper quite personally.
Councillor Duncan.
I'm speaking in support of it, but I would also really appreciate some clarity around what is available to people who are wishing to refurbish, if that could be made.
Any speakers against? Heard 3 speakers for. You said you need your right reply.
I don't believe it's required, Your Worship.
Well, in that case, I must put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. And can we just note the actions required, please, in terms of the alignment? Recommendation, we're up to recommendation 8, are we? Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So the next topic is the schedule of fees and charges. So we had a general increase of 2.3%, along with a number of other small changes that were workshopped with you all earlier this year. We had 8 submitters comment on this key topic, but I do note a number of them were commenting on rates rather than fees and charges directly. There were only a couple that noted their support for the fees and charges, and a couple that noted that they did not support any changes to fees and charges at all. I do want to bring to your attention that officers have tabled a couple of changes to the schedules of fees and charges that we recommend to make. So these are under the dog control fees. We have made these changes available to you on the big tin can, if you've seen them.
We just want to outline what they are.
Yes. Can those changes be brought up on screen? Or these got tabled off on the screen?
I don't have them for everyone. They're on the Tin Can Hub and I've got 9 copies.
It's just a reduction and because of rounding and sorry, Johan.
Reduction is not bad, is it?
Worship, if I may, just to explain.
Certainly, go ahead.
Thank you. So unfortunately, what has happened is rounding has taken place on those fees, but we are still required by the Dog Act to not exceed a certain percentage when you apply a penalty. And unfortunately, with the rounding, it's exceeded that percentage. So we've had to reduce it back to fall under the threshold of the Act. So it is a slight reduction in those proposed fees.
Many people are going to be speaking against the reduction of losses. Any questions? I'll give you a second or two more to read this, but the explanation is a sound one. Thank you. Questions from councillors? No. Questions from councillors against any other parts of the fees and charges?
Oh, the question is, because of those, do we have to move for with amendment, or is that just?
Would be amendment as amended.
Okay, I'll move with amendment.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Wilson seconding. I'm very busy this morning, Councillor Wilson.
Make that the last one.
Councillor Moore, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, the explanation we got.
Councillor Duncan, question or speaking to?
I'll speak for it, but I also want to acknowledge the submitters who spoke about those who have fixed incomes and struggle to meet any of these sorts of fees and charges. The increase affects them, and I think it's important to just recognise that there are people out there hurting. At the same time, we have to be pragmatic about our increases, and they are basically CPI, apart from some that have had to meet the costs. So I believe we do have to do this, but I also just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
I'll speak in favour. I echo your sentiments. A huge number of the submissions were about cutting cloth to suit and rate increase rather than fees and charges, and I accept that. But we're here, the recommendation is about fees and charges specifically. And I would support that. The three speakers in favour, any speakers against? Wish you had your right to reply. Put it to the vote, those in favour, those against. Carried, thank you very much. Recommendation 9. This is the transport speed one. Hawkstone Road, isn't it? So do you wish to speak? Anything, sorry. Speak to it, but anything you want to chat?
Okay, I'll just say that this section was on a program that was the annual plan. We did have 14 people responding to this question, but most people identified as neutral, with a few agreeing and disagreeing with our plan work program. Before we were going to get through the topics, I was going to pass to Leanne.
I had the wrong title. Okay. I thought I corrected it. Yeah, cool. Okay, so good morning, and I'd just like to acknowledge Warren behind me, who's done a lot of the work with this as well. If we can just go to the next slide, and please ignore the words purpose of this workshop. Oh, we've got presentation, that's right, it's updated now, not adequate. So I just wanted to take council through a comparative of what we.
Just a procedural thing, for those online, what you're referring to is an update in terms of the fees and charges / rates.
Rates, not fees and charges.
taking on board that here we're dealing with submissions, and I'll accept it as a benchmarking position against those submissions in effect. And on that basis, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair, the purpose of this presentation is just to give council and the listeners an update on any movement we've had from when we went out to consult at 9.1% rate increase. A few changes that we've done post that, and I wanted to be able to present those comparatives so that council could understand any impact of changes. Let me just flip through. So we started our long-term plan year 2 at 9.9% rates increase. We went out to consultation on 9.1, and we're at the moment sitting there at 8.89. What we did as officers is we have had a really hard look at our budgets and done where we could, but we also had some significant changes. We had the introduction of a new electricity account, and that was a significant increase. That was a 35% increase. We've had a big change, and we've had a review of our capital program, which we've talked about on and off through different financial performance meetings. And as a result of that, we've made some significant changes. We were able to reduce our cost of interest, and we've corrected and got everything flowing through as a result of the NDC contract, Manawatu District Council contract, coming through into year 2, and also refining the NZTA budget because that still had the higher levies. Any questions on that before I go to the next slide?
I have a question around the power increase, the cost of power. And that's extraordinary. Is that across the whole district?
Correct. It was a tender.
Tennis board.
Tenders in
So-
April.
If I may just give some background information, we went to the market and that was the best price that we could find in the supply market today. So we locked those in 3-year blocks. So in 3 years, we're going to do it again.
Further question. So the regulator over the power prices, etc., is the Commerce Commission. Am I right?
I don't know.
Councillors, I'm just becoming a little bit nervous in terms of this meeting has been called in terms of dealing with submissions to plan. And this will certainly, and I'm permitting it in terms of some background information. But this is information that will come towards council in terms of adoption of an annual plan and a full background there. So we'll come back to you. But it is slightly outside of the terms of the call for this meeting, technically. And so I'm just a little wee bit nervous to the Chief Executive around, and I'd take some advice from you.
I think one of the reasons that Ms McDonald has asked to put this up is the subsequent recommendations are requesting funding from council as part of these submissions. So Leanne has chosen to show you where we're at the moment, and if some of the recommendations are passed that are requested through the submissions, that will increase these numbers.
And that's why I've outlined it as permitting it under a place information against those submissions. But it is, in my mind, a little wee bit tenuous in terms of process. So in terms of spending a lot of time, I'm trying to understand previous decisions. I'm just feeling a little bit weary to start.
So through the chair, noting that if I jump through to the next, miss one slide and go to the next one, we'd actually see the rating categories, and that's really where I wanted to, where I wanted to show any changes, and then most of them are just very minor. The main change that we had to do on slide 7 is around Omatani, the rural. So I actually wanted to just acknowledge that. we had rated that, worked our ratings out based on a standard cost of, to run that scheme, and that included the cost of depreciation. As per every annual plan or long-term plan, we seek legal advice when we get ready to do our resolution, and we were advised not to change how we had funded in the past, so we've reverted back. And so while we proposed to be 309.46, it ended up being 101.26, and we've written to those scheme holders. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Other than that, I guess the key message is that we're sitting at the 8.9%.
And certainly, councillors, it is absolutely fair for you to understand a financial position in terms of making a decision on submissions that have been made to you as part of this plan. And as background, that's absolutely fine. So I thank you.
To leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can go back to the topics that submitters raised, if you'd like. The first topic, topic 1 is financial matters. We don't have any recommendations associated with this topic. Would you like to go through this or jump to the recommendations?
What I would ask a question here is on a process in terms of recommendation 9. And the question is, for instance, there has been discussion very recently around another road and speed zone just south of Taihape. But as I understand it, my question to start with, there is no submission relating to that as part of this process.
Yes, I agree that there doesn't seem to be a submission around that, although a letter has come to council since the this closed. But in the past, there have been several submissions over the years from various, from the RI, from the school, from the Taihape Community Board on this subject, but they have not been resubmitted. But then we've had that dreadful accident. And now a letter, that makes any difference?
No, I don't think so. I think that technically we are dealing with submissions made to us over this plan.
Over this period.
And therefore it would be a separate discussion with NZTA. But I just wanted to check that there weren't any submissions relating to it. Okay, so we have to deal with the submissions. Councillor Moore.
My question is about the cost of changing the speed limit, the time involved and the process involved. And staff, in the interest of staff.
Fair question.
So the writing team came back and said the costs will be minimal. What we would have to do is to apply to the director to approve that change, and then we'll just move the 70 to the new limit.
So a question to you, there is an absolute process, isn't there, here, where a decision is made and
yes.
So when we apply doesn't mean that it necessarily changes.
Yeah, that's good.
Does that help, Councillor Moore? Yeah. Councillor Carter.
To the 70k, is it now? Being there, what was the speed limit? Because that's only just been introduced.
No, this particular one through you, it's been like that for some time. The 70 has been there for some time.
What was it prior?
Oh, I don't know.
Somebody put a motion on the floor so we can discuss those.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I'll move if we do look at changing and I'll speak to it.
If we do apply.
Yeah.
We're looking for a seconder to that. I'll second it. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I'm a frequent user of Wanganui Road down past Auckland Road. And it always struck, when this came up, because it's always struck me as strange where the 70 starts, like the town's clearly growing past where the 50 was. And it seemed logical it seemed to me like it was a throwback from when the housing stopped at the 50k, but it's certainly growing down the road. It always seemed a strange place to have the 70k sign to me, so
Any other speakers?
Question.
Question I can take, councillor.
Is there a staff recommendation on
It's included in the.
Recommendations to leave it open to councillors to decide as to whether you do or don't want to go ahead.
Correct, your worship. There is a officer analysis that gives a bit more background, so it's part of the message here.
Look, I'll speak in favour. It's worth having the conversation. And this isn't unique to this situation. I'm also aware of other ones that I've hinted at, but we deal with the submission as is. Any other speakers? Councillor.
I'll speak in favour. It just lines up with what Puki Papa Road does, as far as its limit for 50 to 70, and it's residents' well-being and safety.
Any speakers against? Councillor Lambert, do you wish to write a reply?
No.
Put the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Next one, recommendation 10. Now we start getting into what would be costs and significant costs from here on in with other recommendations. So in terms of recommendation 10, this is McPherson's reserve to the value of 46,000 as a capital expense. Staff, have you got any questions?
Through the chair, while it is a capital expense, because it would come through our unsubsidised roading, it would actually be rated. We don't capitalise, sorry, we do capitalise. We don't loan fund roading. It is rated. And so that would have an impact on the rates increase that we've discussed.
Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Can I just ask what, for every, how many dollars do we spend to get a centre rate? I think it was 300,000 or something.
Close to 332,000 excluding just, yeah.
Percent increase in rates.
Yeah, so this would, just this alone would take it to 9.04.
This is one.
Just this, yeah.
A question, if I may, your worship, to Mr. Bernardi. Does this 46,000, which is obviously doesn't attract a far rate, could it be applied for into our low cost, low risk future safety funding or anything like that going forward in our roading cycles?
No, it would not be supported by NZTA for funding in any category in the future.
Okay. Question from me, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Carter. I know this reserve well, and I have walked around it reasonably recently. Has anybody looked at the log as to how many people are using this per day on average over the post it being reopened? So we don't know whether we're talking 2 vehicles a day or 20 vehicles a day, do we?
Well, can I just add to that in a response to a question I had at the submissions? It was at a working bee, there could be 6 to 8 vehicles at a working bee. Okay. Yeah, that's in the last meeting we had about submission meeting.
Somebody needs to put something on the table pretty shortly. I've got Councillor Carter first.
Putting something on the table for you does not.
So you're moving does not fund.
Yeah.
46,000. Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Wilson seconding. Any further questions before I move on? Councillor Duncan, Councillor Loudon, Councillor Duncan.
So if we take that this isn't safe for people for vehicles to park, obviously safety is a concern. So they are going to keep looking at ways to make this happen. Are there any external funding that is applicable here?
The answer is there's lots of external funding. They could apply to Dunning Trust. They could apply, one of the principal funders of this reserve, Forest and Bird, because it was a granted reserve. So yes, potentially there are other funding options. Councillor,
How busy is that road? I've been there and been through the reserve, and there was hardly any cars tracking up and down that road that day.
we can't give you a traffic count. Sorry, so it's certainly not it's not a major road. You obviously know where it goes to and from.
Yeah.
Let's speak to your motion.
The reason I'm against the funding is that their request when they're talking about it was putting in a culvert along the side of the road of some 20 odd metres for cars to park on at a considerable cost. Whereas I asked the question about just putting in a road crossing and then going parking in the reserve, which is something they hadn't thought of. So this is something that I believe that they could be doing to rectify the safety of people visiting the park, is to have people parking off the narrow road. So that's why I'm against having a large amount of money put into it next year.
Just my advice in terms of that, there is a river there. The river is right against the road. There is a walking bridge. There's no way that you could put car parking into the river. But it's just the way that the lie of the land is here. There are the other McPherson's Reserve, potentially you could do that, but not this one.
Oh, that was the indication that they showed us in their plan. That the parking was to go on the side of the road and on over a culvert. Yeah, if I've got that picture correct. If that culvert's there, they can then go into their reserve through the fence.
Yeah,
but that was the
I
reason.
take on board your comments because some of these reserves, but I'm not sure whether this one, that's an option. Staff, any correction to me? I don't know. I'm not sure. Councillor Wilson.
Speaking in favour of the motion that we do not fund, simply by listening to the conversations that's gone around here, there's too many questions. Yeah, where's the detailed plan? It's $46,000 of unbudgeted capital expense that was an estimated price given by an officer some time ago. As per the questions, this has the potential to blow out to be significantly more. Just too many unknowns for us to support a blanket $46,000 new capital spent without far more detail, and conversation around this room indicates that there's a lot of unknowns.
Any further speakers? You should write it right. Put to the vote those in favour that we do not fund. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Next one. The council does or does not agree to fund a covered area with barbecue facilities, type of playground with a value of 67,000, etc. Councillor Wong.
I'd like to make an amendment to this motion, or this recommendation.
Well, you don't have to make an amendment, it becomes your motion.
Okay, my motion is to contribute to this project of the Tiger Playground Group to the value of $25,000. I speak to it.
A question from staff. In terms of staff, do you wish to speak to this in terms of what has already been granted against this budget?
Yeah, so through the chair, we know that we've carried forward 50,000 from last year into this year's budget for this for the playground, and it has not yet been expensed. So my question would be, by carrying this in, it is OPEX, not CAPEX, because we won't own the asset. At this stage, they aren't at the point of progressing, is my understanding. Whether it would impact on next year's budgets, quite hard to gauge.
Just a question, council would be the owners, I presume. It's built on council land and all council playgrounds that are developed are handed over back to council.
Apologies, I stand corrected.
I would agree with his worship, yeah.
Yeah, so we would.
That does have an impact that changes, which, so we, at the moment, we have 50K sitting in the carry forwards from prior year.
I was just going to make the point that when we asked the submitter, they hadn't progressed their own fundraising at this stage. So it's how soon they would require that 50,000 is also a point that would be good to know from that group.
Council.
Just a point of clarification. They have taken further steps to fundraise with they've created a QR code and a marketing strategy in a way so that people can donate, and they're also putting up posters with the same thing along with their everyday fundraising, which they do all the time.
Fairness to Councillor Wong, there were some questions raised, and I said to that become your motion. Do you still wish to put a motion on the floor?
Yes, please.
Is this a question? A question first? Yes, go ahead.
So is that $25,000 and over and above the 50 that's already in the system?
Correct, would be. Councillor Wong.
Do you need a second first?
No, you haven't told me exactly what your motion is.
To contribute $25,000 to that project.
So that would be above the 50,000.
Yes.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Duncan, you wishing to second that? Any further questions before I go to speaker? Councillor Dalgety online. Welcome to the fray.
My question was just around the OPEX there, and I was just a little bit confused because my reading was that this would be a new expense. Do we not clean the existing toilets, etc. there? That's what I just wasn't understanding when they were talking about a new 15,000 to 18,000 cost for cleaning, travel, and consumables. Well, is there not? There is a, yeah. I just wasn't sure how that's fitted with the barbecue scenario.
Yeah, I wondered about that too, councillor, because we do have toilets there.
Yeah.
U-shaped toilet, which is planned at some stage for demolition as part of this process. But we take on board the officer's comments. That comes at cleaning barbecues and things, that comes at a cost.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the cost is for the additional cleaning. So the teams that we have, very large district, especially after type team, if we ask them to clean things other than buildings and toilets, then it takes more time. It's different materials. What we find in some of the other barbecues, the real challenge is the refilling of the gas, because it's as and when it is quite a complex thing to keep running and to keep clean, and there will definitely be additional OPEX costs.
Right, that's dealt with questions. Go back to the speaker.
I do understand how our budget is stretched, and I don't want to be the one to keep increasing the rates. But this project has actually moved on quite significantly in the past year. They've got plans. They are faced with raising close to $1 million for this project. And they will raise a lot of money through Bunnings Trust and other things for the playground. This is additional to the playground and will help increase the park's attractiveness to the area, including economic increases for the community. The question of increased running costs for that area can be addressed at a later stage by negotiation with the playground group and community groups to clean their own area and to keep their gas cylinders up through their own funding to feed them. And but faced with having to raise nearly $1 million for this playground group and this is outside the playground group. I feel a gesture to them. They run cake stands every week and raffles and stuff, so they have been funding at a small level. But until they had a plan and a cost, they couldn't actually fundraise to the big funders. So as a gesture or as a to keep the sort of positive direction going, and lacking sort of the resources that bigger centres like Martin have, I think a gesture from council would be a very helpful thing at this stage.
One speaker for. Take speakers for or against. Councillor Dalgety, I'll take, then I'll go Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dalgety.
While I acknowledge this project has been in front of council for what seems like years now, and it must be frustrating, the slow progress, and I think they have been waiting for a plan which we would have been that they've had to wait for staff as well. I just would prefer that they stuck to their core. This seems just to be another project on a stretched resource, and I'm just, while it may add to the space, I just think we should get the core project sorted and then add these on afterwards. So I'm against the motion.
We've had one speaker for, one against. Councillor Wilson.
Speaking against the motion as well, I hear everything that Councillor Wong has said, and he suggested that a small gesture of $25,000 should be made to him. However, we made a gesture of $50,000, which still sits there and carried over as a final funder for this project. So we have already got $50,000 sitting in the budget to help the Taipei playground. Whether or not it's made up of a barbecue or whether or not it's made up of a swing, I don't know. But we have got $50,000 in there, and we're hearing that a plan is now being developed to put even $25,000 in. A little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to something that I don't think we've seen a thorough plan of to how it would work. We already are invested to $50,000 in this, so I'm speaking against any further funding at this time.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank
Next
you.
speaker.
Well, the plans are obviously there, and they do still have options, obviously, depending on how much money they can raise. But I'm speaking for the motion, in that 50,000 was actually part of the Parks and Reserves Fund, I believe, in the first place, which they applied for, which is no longer available. And so they've had to come to us.
I have to stop you there. Just, are you saying that it is no longer available?
No, that the actual the ability to apply for that fund is no longer available.
But the 50,000
The 50,000 is definitely there. That's right. Which
Okay.
they can't use because we are their final funders. So what they have done is they have widened their horizons and their view of the playground to include community, and want a facility that more than just the children can play on, that will bring other people in. And I really respect that view, to try and make it more of a community facility. And so I'd like to see us support that.
Further speakers? We've had 2 speakers for, 2 speakers against. Any further speakers? I'll go back to write a reply.
I understand the frustration with the length of time this project has lingered for, but as Councillor Dalgety has said, this group could not progress any further until the council had designated the area that the park was allocated to them. So, and also the increase in scope of this project, including the community area, increases the ability to apply for funding. So, for this reason, I think I seriously support this recommendation, this motion.
Let's put it to the vote. Those speakers in favour of the motion that the 25,000 gets added to. 1, 2, Reservation is lost. Thank you. Next, my recommendation 12, that council does or does not agree to fund the feasibility study for the Gorges to Sea Cycle Trail. To be funded as an additional rate funded operational expense as part of the district promotions cost centre. And there would need to be a value put in there, whichever way, if you decide to support. Questions, who's presenting any staff input into this? Otherwise, I'll go straight to questions. Take questions of the report.
Can you explain what the district promotions cost centre is?
Yeah, through your worship. That's just specifying the area and council that we budget it for. So that's more of a kind of operational, so we know where that funding would come out of.
And there is a fund there for such things.
This would be additional, so it would be additional. There's no current funding available for this project.
Not even in the new financial year.
Just a question for those online that haven't read the report, the funding request is for how much?
$34,479, noting that they have noted that any funding would be appreciated if council didn't want to fund the full cost.
Correct, and the report indicates that they have struggled to find feasibility funding from other sources. Councillor Maughan.
I'm going to move that the council does not agree to fund a feasibility study.
Looking for a seconder to that.
I'll second that.
Councillor Lambert seconding it. Take any further questions first. Questions at Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Dalgetty. Councillor Duncan.
Can you give me an indication of what what that fund would what the amount of that fund for the next financial year? I'm assuming that it rolls around every financial year.
There is no.
So it's not a fund, it's just a general ledger, the name of a general ledger line of where staff's time and other things that we do internally already get coded to. It's not a fund.
Yeah.
There's no budget against it.
No.
There will be, but it's already committed to the work that we've got coming up. So it's got staff time, it'll have some of the promotion stuff that the comms team do, that sort of thing is just put into that GL line.
Thank you.
Go to question, Councillor Dalgetty.
And do we have any idea in terms of the farm owners that would be affected by this trail, whether they're in favour or they're supporting this concept or not?
Dana?
Nothing from, we haven't done any of that kind of work, Your Worship. It's all just conceptual at the moment. So,
a question. I'll take your question then mine.
I can speak to that if you like, because we did have a public meeting at in the Tarwell School with the promoters of this project, with a good number actually of affected parties, landowners, etc. And I think the overall, I think it's fair to say, Your Worship, you were there. It was positive, but people were wanting more information and better communication was the main thing that came out of that meeting.
I'll raise this as a question for clarification. So my understanding of this is that this would be a cycle trail that is open to anybody to use, but a commercial operator would use it as a commercial operation as well. So you can have cycle trails that anybody can go and use, but you can have people that organise to use it as a business associated with it. Councillor Duncan, have I got that about right?
That's so great.
Any staff comment there? Right. Councillor Moore, you are the mover, you'll speak to it.
Yeah. Like, this is a good idea, but we have so many projects, so much staff pressure that to do something like this and the cost, it's unbudgeted cost. I think we always seem to be going off on tangents, and this is another one. I just don't, and plus it's only conceptual at the moment. There's a lot more questions and water to go under the bridge. I know the feasibility study would sort all that out, but I just don't think it's a space we should be in at this time.
I'll go Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Councillor Wilson first.
I'm speaking in support of the motion that we do not fund. However, as part of the process of feedback to the submitters, could I request that that staff feedback with a recommendation the application be made to the Community Initiatives Fund at the next round?
Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, just to reiterating what Councillor Moore said, times are tough out there. I mean, it'll be great, it'd be nice to see, but furthering on from what Councillor Moore said, come and see us again in a few years' time, you know, when things are a bit better. And this isn't a complete no, but you know, at this stage, I just think it's a nice to have.
We've had 3 speakers for. Councillor Loudon, you speak against.
I'm speaking against the motion. I like this initiative. It's very positive. I was impressed with your presentation. I'm a bit tired of the negativity around people who want to do things, and this is a crowd that seem well organised. I note in the latest quarterly update on economics, our tourism industry is down 15.3% on spend based against a Manawatu average of minus 2.5 and a national average of 0. We here in the Rangitikei have a huge opportunity within tourism that is unrealised, and this group of people are trying very hard to change that vector. So I'm definitely speaking against this motion.
Councillor Duncan, you speak against the motion?
Yes, I do. I absolutely agree with Councillor Loudon that we have to put our money where our mouth is at some stage, and these are good, sensible and experienced business people who really know their stuff, and they've got all the connections. They've been running in tourism for a very long time, and they've got a fabulous base, one part of them particularly, and they know what they're talking about. And I think this is a great opportunity, and we should support them to a value, not necessarily the full amount, but I would be really happy to foreshadow a motion of giving them $10,000.
Are you foreshadowing a little of this motion?
Yes, I'd like to foreshadow a motion that council does agree to fund the feasibility study to the amount of $10,000 to be funded as an additional rate funded operational expense as part of the District Promotions Cost Centre.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak against? Councillor Moore.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Loudon and Councillor Duncan and this is a Rangitikei wide project, and it's been on the books for quite a while, and it's progressed further than perhaps people realise. There is a lot of water down the bridge, as was noted, and this will move on. To answer the previous question from his worship, I think, or from Councillor Dalgety, at the meetings, the public meeting, there were a lot of landowners that were sceptical about it, but wanting more information, but they would support it in principle, but they wanted to see the details. And if this helps explore the details, I would support funding for it.
I now need to go back, unless there are further questions, go back to the right of reply.
Yeah.
Councillor Moore.
Just through the discussion, council putting its money where its mouth is. We've got millions of dollars of infrastructure we're putting into place that we've promised. So I think we are stepping up in that respect, or this one is. And the other thing that's come up is that there could be a commercial operation running this trail. So, you know, we could be investing money into a project that commercial enterprises will be using, and they should be stepping up and putting their own money in if it's going to be a commercial enterprise. So I still believe that we should just focus on what we're doing at the moment and where we've committed our money to, and get on with it.
Now I must put it to the vote. So be very clear that this is the vote is whether if you're supporting the motion, it is not to agree to fund the feasibility study. So those in favour of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, Councillor Dalgety, you had your hand up. 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3. Motion is successful. So vote, record a vote against.
Thank you, please.
Before I go to recommendation 4, no, I can go straight to it actually. Recommendation 4 that council accepts the officer analysis made in the officer analysis of submissions, and I'll move it with the amendment to be used as council's response to submitters, because we have suggested some comments back. I'll move that, looking for a seconder to that. Go Councillor Carter. I think this is just a final step here. I think it is routine. Are there any other speakers or questions? No. I'll put for vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carries. Nothing further staff that I have to do. And I thank you for the amount of work that goes in behind this. I know it's been a reasonably short process, but the analysis and collation and the whole submission process, we absolutely accept it takes quite some time. Thank you for fronting that. And I'll declare the meeting closed at 10:40.